Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. I'm bringing back Megan Swan. Megan, this is your third time on my show, but we had to have a conversation today because not only do you have an incredible venture that helps people with preventative medicine and health, but this has been such an ongoing journey for me on my fertility journey. I think so many people are kind of frustrated with the current system as well. So before we kind of dive all into it, I would just love to have you introduce yourself quickly to the audience in case they haven't listened to the other episodes and what you're all about.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me back. I'm honored. My name is Megan Swan. I'm a wellness coach and consultant and strategist. I have my own business called Megan Swan Wellness, and I've been coaching primarily female entrepreneurs for 8 years. I also went through Carolina's program, her 5 times certification, really emphasized all the work that I'm doing and gave me all these new tools and modalities to incorporate in my work as a coach. And the latest venture, I'm co-founding a new company called Alta Vita Medical Wellness Tourism. We are running primarily retreats for North Americans to a hidden gem part of Mexico called Chiapas. And it's this intersection of advanced medical diagnostics with holistic and wellness coaching and experiences and sessions, and then just the power of healing and a catalyst for change that is travel. And we're obviously very passionate. This is part of the world that we lived in for 15 years. And we've been building up the infrastructure, and it's been this idea that's been seeded for a long time as we were essentially doing the same thing for friends and family for the last decade. So there's lots of layers that I can go into, but that's like the first is these retreats that we're running. The first two are coming up soon. We're very excited.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love what you're doing in this world. It is so amazing just to watch this career evolve and then to bring in the partnerships that you have. Like, I know your husband's a doctor and you have all this other support staff that can help, really from that medical diagnostics perspective. Because I think we can start here, Megan. Like, I personally am on this fertility journey and, right away around like the 8 month mark after not getting pregnant, you go to your doctor and you're like, what can you do? And I am part of I pay like the highest insurance that you can possibly pay. And I'm out of pocket everything because I'm self-employed, right? So we're paying the highest you can pay. And immediately the doctor's like, there's nothing we can do for fertility. It's like, I can see what your vitamin D levels are and your thyroid level. And then after that, like you're completely on your own. And that my even, insurance, like I'm in Kaiser, so Kaiser has like a branch of hospitals and stuff like that, that they even have a fertility center. But even if I wanted to, I couldn't pay out of pocket to join that. And I was just like, okay, great. So all of a sudden it's like, what do we do? And so then we start going to, people we find maybe on the internet, naturopaths or other practitioners. We start to find like a fertility clinic and stuff like that. My husband has, in addition to that, some other health challenges. He has like a hip impingement. He has maybe some thyroid issues, some maybe cholesterol issues, and like he's trying to navigate the conventional medical system, and every single time he navigates it, like it is the most frustrating experience ever. He has a history of heart disease in his family. Like his grandparents died in their 50s. His uncle had a heart attack when he was 30 years old. And when he told his doctor that and the fact that he has high cholesterol, his doctor was like totally brushed him off. And then finally, after advocating for himself for many, many times over, she finally referred him to a cardiologist. And the cardiologist is like, no, this stuff is a big deal, right? Like this stuff does actually really matter. I'm glad you finally got here to help. So it's just been like one thing after another. Like our frustration is the highest it can possibly be. So can you tell me from like your insider experience, why is the conventional medicine system so hard, so frustrating? And it's like when you're healthy and fine, you don't recognize sometimes, but then maybe you are on a fertility journey. Maybe you are trying to improve your longevity. Maybe you get an autoimmune condition. Maybe, the thyroid isn't working as well. There's all these things that are happening now that we're like in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and we're starting to see how broken it is now that we actually need help. So can you tell us a little bit about like what your insight into that is?
Wow. Okay. You just shared so much. And I just like goosebumps on some of the things that you're dealing with and the frustration. I know it's just like so unbelievable sometimes that this is the state of the system. So to give some context, I'm going to be referring to Medicine 2.0, which is basically the current structure, and like we can go down various rabbit holes on how far back it goes and what are the what are its main pain points and everything. But the reality is, both in Canada and the US, Medicine 2.0 is really sick care. It's not health care. You're going to a specialist that's really been educated, and we're talking about decades back how the medical school works. They're largely educated and in siloed specialties on how to deal with, disease, and actually specifically when you're at like the sort of worst range of that disease. So even just looking at what, the medical system considers in normal range, that's not what the one outside of the medical system would consider healthy. It's just like you're not sick yet. And so just from that lens, it's important to understand when they're telling you, that the burnout that they're experiencing, the overwhelm on the system, their real passion, if you want to, or interest is in helping these people that are at the end range and like are in dire need of treatment, if you will. Whereas if you're trying to be proactive and preventative, which is what we're encouraging through Alta Vita, is you're often talking to physicians and even just a system that's not designed to really help you do that, or certainly not encourage you to do that. And so the reality is, these are massive systems that are not going to change anytime soon. So that is why we've created this service, because it's filling a gap in the market. The people that are already seeing that they need to be agents for their own health, and they're already seeking second opinions, or like you are, like going out of pocket and trying to solve the problem instead of just, I think we've come a long way, because, my parents' generation would have just accepted what, the godlike figure in the white lab coat told them, as like, this is the only option. This is like, there's nothing to do, end point, and left it at that. Whereas, our generation were highly aware that that's just one opinion, that there's options out there, but all of the seeking and doing research and all those options still falls on us. And so it's navigating like a very vast system and of options, and then also you're under stress as an individual at that moment in time. So instead of feeling like you've come to a compassionate place to seek support, you're often felt like, yeah, I mean, I've talked to multiple clients, and they, when I start talking about what we're doing here, they're immediately giving me a story of, basically how they had a negative experience, and maybe it was like a long time ago, even as a child, but that sort of painted their perception of going to the doctor for the rest of their lives. And so I think one thing that I realized after living in Mexico for 15 years, because really I haven't been in the Canadian system, I'm Canadian born in Canada. I haven't really experienced the Canadian system for 20 years because all of my support, living in Mexico. And it's just kind of night and day in terms of just how doctors talk to you, and like the care and the compassion that comes with it. And part of it is because they're not in this maxed out, stressed out situation as they're working. Of course, there's like exceptions to every rule here. And there's a lot of ways to, find more support in both Canada and the US, and that doesn't involve necessarily traveling to Mexico to have a bunch of tests done and to join our network. But I think we saw how powerful this could be, mostly in that, like I said, we had friends and family come visit us over the 15 years that we were living there, and inevitably it's like, ooh, is there any way to get like a CT scan or a bone density scan? Because I've been trying to do it for 6 months, and it's like, it's either extremely expensive or this insane wait list, or, I have to have a prescription to be able to get one. And like all of these barriers to entry to being proactive and preventative about your own health situation. So, yeah, I mean, I can dive down on you talked about a lot of issues that you guys are dealing with, like any one would be stressful. And then you bring in all these layers, and it's just like I mean, I think what happens for a lot of people is they just compartmentalize it and decide to not deal with it. Maybe not every one of the issues you talked about, but a lot of them, it's like, well, that just seems like too big a problem to solve. So I'll
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
take some medication.
Yeah. So I know you talked about like how the system is designed to like really grow for the most aggressive and latest stage of a disease. So, we can think of like maybe diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia. So what, in your opinion, are like, how you just said your labs are normal, but they're not healthy. So what are the indicators that you're seeing through this work that are, maybe this is the precursors to all that stuff down that line? Is it like the gut health you're seeing? Is it like the mitochondrial health and metabolic health? Like, where are you seeing those earlier signs on different, maybe clients you've worked with or different tests that you've done that are indicating that's the road you're going on, but here how we can stop it and prevent it? Like, what should be people paying attention to before they have those, bigger signals?
Yeah, so I'll back up first, just give everyone a really great resource. It's very sciencey based, but I mentioned the whole context of medicine 2.0. So the evolution of that is what's being called medicine 3.0. And I believe Dr. Peter Attia coined the term. If not, he goes into it in depth in his book Outlive, and that's I highly recommend. It's like a really great starting point. He also has like some things that you can do that don't require travel in terms of being like much more aware of biomarkers. I know he offers like a lot of really intense blood work, and I think really for the average person, what's important here is to just understand one, like you brought up, the family history on these points is incredibly important. However, it's not like the determining factor, but uh, I- mm, I'll go into a brief of epigenetics, which we understand a little bit more now that yes, you have these DNA sort of, your family history and your DNA is a map, but your lifestyle choices really determine like what path you're going on this map that you're given when you're born. And so there's what medicine 2.0 does not give the average, the average doctor is not talking to patients about their mental health, how are they eating, how are they sleeping, any major relationship issue. Like they don't have the time or capacity to do that. And so now we understand like there's all these other things that are impacting like what health path you go down. And therefore, if you understand that you have all of these things that are really like your day-to-day life choices in your control and how powerful they are, it becomes just, I think empowering to understand, okay, well, I'm not at the whim of this system. And also, let's find the practitioners and team that's really going to help me understand, okay, here's my current status. Here's what I can change. Here's what I need to be a little bit more aware of, and like the sort of like trajectory of preventative health testing that I might want to be more aware of if, for example, I have heart disease in my family. And so I think it's these tiny markers that don't necessarily, I mean, you get the tests because the brain fog. You're feeling like lethargic, even though you're doing all the same things and nothing's really changed, but you don't feel the same anymore. And again, like I don't feel great is this very subjective thing that you go to a doctor's office and it's like I just feel like something's off, particularly as women. Like we know on an intuition level that something's not right, but we don't necessarily have the words. And this is one of the experiences that's been recounted to me numerous times by clients and potential clients. Like they understand that something's off. They go to a doctor, and then you kind of oftentimes just enter in this like weird freeze, like especially if you're in like a lab coat and you're like half naked, and like it's just this weird environment where you don't tend to feel like you can't access that part of you that wants to be descriptive. And so one piece of advice is to journal these things and get really descriptive. Like you have lower back pain, but like what is the lower back pain? How frequent is it? So when you go into a doctor and say, like, look, it's instead of them kind of waving you off as like, oh, it's probably just stress. It's like, no, it changes at this point when I'm doing this. And, it's like shooting pain, or the more that you can just be descriptive and hone in on the fact, like, no, something's wrong. Like, this is not give me a prescription. And I mean, this is a whole other rabbit hole we can go down to in terms of, the system, both in Canada and the US, wants to help you feel like you resolved the problem. The easiest way to resolve the problem is to resolve the symptom with medication and not look at the underlying root causes, which involve a lot of more studies that are, costly to either the insurance companies or, to the government in Canada. And so it's all just this like yeah, spiraling out of control, like only treating the symptom that doesn't get you to the root cause, and really just inform you like where do you still have agency in what how you can change your life now. And you and I are similar, I'm a little bit older than you, but we're at this stage, and we're going to be living till 90, 100. Like we're not even halfway. And like what quality of life are you looking to have? And so understanding like these deeper biometrics, I'm kind of on the fence because of course like I'm the wellness, the holistic person of the pair, and my husband is, he's vascular surgeon, general surgeon, and like, deeply passionate about the medical lens. And I think what's very powerful is both. But and where I come in, it's like, okay, yes, we have all this data, like use all your biometrics, your Whoop, your Aura Ring, whatever, and understand what's going on in your system, but also trust that inner knowing that something's off and you're needing to insist for deeper testing, that there's something that can be done. It's not just, and like, particularly in the world of women's health, and we can go into like the layer upon layer of issues that, medicine 2.0 based a lot of its averages and a lot of its, averages in terms of what prescription should be done or what's the normal range on a white male body and not necessarily a female body. It's only in the last decade or two that they've actually been doing a lot more studies on women's bodies. And yeah, we're still at this point where so many issues that women are dealing with in reproductive health, there's not the research there. And so women tend to go, years, if not a decade, before they get a proper diagnosis for something like endometriosis or PCOS, and like the infertility issue is massive, and it's kind of mind-boggling that it has not been, solved more, in that it's the average, like more couples than not deal with this in some shape or form. And it's such a stressful thing to be dealing with. And so all the solution has been, privatize instead of like getting to the root cause. Because I mean, no one's like, that's a whole other podcast of like all the issues of the things that are going in our environment and our lifestyle these days, that just the reality is more people are having issues getting pregnant.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was just saw this post and, we'll go so deep into all the things you said, but it just struck me so hard. And it was like all these corporations raised a generation of women to eat Cheez-Its, be on birth control, drink alcohol, and, shop at Sephora. And then they're funneling them into these multi-thousand-dollar IVF treatments when they get older. You know what I mean? Like really just thinking about that for a second of like, that is literally how our generation has been raised. It's like the most unhealthy practices, the environmental toxins, just all that kind of stuff. No real knowledge about our hormones and all that stuff. Like you said, it's just literally in the last 10 years, we can see perimenopause as a conversation just like now. It wasn't around even, many, many years ago. It's just so fascinating. And then like the solution is just like, well, let's just do another medical intervention or whatever it is for you. It might not be fertility, it could be something else, but it's always just this like, okay, either prescribe something or let's do this intervention without being like, wait a minute, what caused this situation to begin with? How can we start to reverse it and stuff? And I love the book by Tony Robbins as well called Life Force, which is all about this kind of new regenerative medicine. And some of the things he talks about are very like far out, like new innovations, new, inventions even that are going to be bringing different medical services to us. But he did talk a lot about how the tracking, the wearables, the different biomarkers, the testing, like more individualistic testing is what's going to really, really help us. And so I want to like kind of dive into this a little bit. So I have had a lot of individual kind of testing done and biomarkers done, but I've also been on the other side of the disappointment of like, okay, now what? I can't read this. And whoever was supposed to interpret it for me and give me like some kind of guideline was like, oh, just go get this supplement. You know what I mean? So what happens, there's like function health these days too, where you can get like a lot of your biomarkers. Obviously, like you said, it's really hard sometimes in the conventional system to get them. So, there's even these labs like Diagnostics these days where you pay out of pocket and, order them yourself. But what happens now when you have some more of these results, but you don't know how to interpret them? So even something super simple, Megan, like I didn't know how to interpret my aura like st data. Like they give you a score, right? But like when you're
Mhm.
actually looking at
You're
some of the
like, good,
stuff,
bad, but what does that mean?
does it
Like,
mean,
the
right? So
yellow
like
flag.
how like what else do we need to know? Like how do you think that, obviously you have a beautiful service that's going to be addressing this, but like what's next? Like once we have the data, what's next?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of questions there. Let's go with, I think what's important and what to us is really valuable in this service is that there's multiple specialties looking at the same data. And that just doesn't happen either in Canada or the US for different reasons. But it just goes back to Medicine 2.0 being very siloed. Usually you have to go to your GP and they're going to recommend you to a specialist, and the specialist is only one thing, and the specialist doesn't communicate with the different specialists. And then so now you have this sort of like, um, yeah, like not communicating network that you're having to go from A to B and B to C. And I mean, I can tell you just so many horror stories of, okay. But let's stay on the point of your data is so much more powerful these days because what I was mentioning, like not particularly for women, we're giving this diagnosis or an opinion from Medicine 2.0 system based on these averages that could be outdated, not based on our gender, not based on the phase of life or our lifestyle. And we're now understanding like how impactful all these external factors are. And therefore, if you have a deep understanding of what your personal baseline data is, and going back to your aura ring, so it's not so much about, I mean, of course I want to understand what you're seeing, but it's more about tracking your personal shifts over time that gives you the power and being like, no, no, I was like 10 times better a year ago. Like something is off. And at the same time, I think again, what's powerful about Altavita is you're going to have that direct line of, you want to talk to someone about what's going on in your system or your data has really shifted. Both in Canada, you cannot get a doctor on the phone. It's no like, you, first of all, you have to go see them in person. I mean, there's been like some shifts post pandemic that there's some like rules, but they call you and then you have to call them back. I was just speaking to like this high power um, entrepreneur the other day, and she's like, I don't have, like, I'm never going to get that call back. Like, I don't have time to call back in a certain amount of windows. And so, I'm your perfect client because if you can get all of these things done that take me, you know, over time to get 10 different appointments done in both places, you're talking about like a 6 months to 18-month window and seeing all these different specialists. And at no point do you get that aggregate comeback of like, okay, great, now you have all this information and let's give you a holistic view of actually what's going on. Instead you've got like your neck problem, that solution, your hip problem, that solution. And that's not how the body works. The body is a single organism. All of these things are communicating. All your systems are communicating. So if you're having some respiratory problems, it's going to be affecting your circulation. It's going to be affecting your brain fog, how your reproductive system's working. Like they're not siloed. And so this idea that we can have these solutions parsed out is just not realistic. And so I guess to loop it back, you know me, I love to talk in tangents. The data is what's giving you kind of like that overall window. And then because once you have this understanding of your own personal foundation baseline, then you can be much more informed and powerful when you're going to, whether it be your GP or just you're giving them the information that things have changed. This is not my average. I don't care what the national average for XYZ I was here and it was maintained like that for 6 months, and now all of a sudden it's spiked or it's dropped, and it just allows you to be, yeah, in a more empowered position when you're speaking to someone in medicine.
Yeah. Let's say I get some results and I get some lifestyle modifications to go with it. And how long would you say, to do those lifestyle modifications before you start like retesting and stuff like that? What are some of the lifestyle modifications for people? And what are some of the kind of more important longevity biomarkers that you've identified that like people need to know these numbers around, like their, this score or this or that? If you found like any of those that, maybe the conventional medicine doesn't test unless you go aggro at them and you're trying to get them to test these things, like what are some of those missing things? Like I know, for example, a lot of people are vitamin D deficient, and that's actually causing a lot of other problems like upstream, but it's like a simple thing that like a lot of places don't test. So just in your experience, like are there any more of those? And also, what are those lifestyle modifications that we can start doing too?
Yeah. So let's start there. I was going to say the vitamin deficiency, like really, I don't know how it is specifically in the US. I'm sure you can pay for it out of pocket. I know of a few practitioners that really focus on this one piece. There's actually really incredible testing you can do through hair molecules in terms of your vitamin deficiency. But
I love that because I hate getting my blood drawn. I'm a fainter. Like anything with like a swab is so much better.
and they're coming out with such cool stuff, like certain patches that are like it's going to be wild. But at the moment, I think that's one thing that we don't think of, and kind of looping back to what you were saying about, how our system has been set up, and big corporate institutions are happy to funnel us into these like very expensive solutions. It's important to understand the relationship, and one could debate like how direct it is, but let's just say that they're in bed together, big pharma
Cheetos.
with the industrialized food system, like there are a lot of very direct relationships, but at the very least, they're all at the same country club, they're friends, they're very happy that the food system is, pushing up the need for, let's talk about Ozempic and all of those drugs, the insulin, like all of these things, one influences the other. So just understanding that the modern day food system, is not nutrient dense, and you really kind of have to go out of your way to be hitting those. And I mean, sidebar, big pharma's play for that solution is this multi-billion-dollar supplement industry, which, you know, definitely take your vitamins, but also it's so important that you're eating real food. And so I think that vitamin deficiency piece is one that's not commonly, like I know in the Canadian system, you really have to push to get like a whole panel done on what deficiency, and the gut health test that we offer does give you a lot of indicators. And so I think there's a lot that's evolving in terms of the ways that we can access this information. It doesn't need to be through blood work, for example, although it's very great marker. Other longevity measurements that are maybe like not as understood. I mean, again, there's a lot in the gut health that we can understand. Another one is lung capacity. Like it's actually the number one biomarker, and so that's something that you can, like, you don't necessarily need to measure. It's something you can work on as an individual through breath work and just being a little bit more conscious about how you're breathing. And these are tools that are not, um, that are extremely powerful, and I think underrepresented as ways to boost your longevity. Um, Sleep is sort of like the number one thing. And I'll just give you a little story of a client who was having issues getting pregnant. They had, previously lost a baby, and the solution at the end of the day, or, not the solution, one key piece that I think was put in place was her sleep. And that involved not sleeping in the same bedroom with her husband a couple days a week because they had completely different schedules. And so we suggested, look, uh, you need, as an entrepreneur, to be on your game. You need to have like absolute focus and no brain fog, like at least 3 days a week. So let's prioritize 3 days a week. You have like your little, she had the option like of like another bedroom, right? So it wasn't like a big just sleep in the guest bedroom and it was just life-changing for her business, life-changing for the relationship, because this is something that I even suggested. Like all of these, all the pheromones, all the hormones, like everything works when there's like a little bit more desire between, and like usually it's easier to create that desire when there's a little bit of distance between the couple, right? And so it just feeling like that much more special. And when they were sleeping together, and yeah, long story short, she just had the baby. So I think there's tools that aren't necessarily involving, you understanding deep biomarkers that you're, because I think that also creates this level of stress that you're watching these things. So I think like all tools, it's important to implement them and sort of have them in your toolbox, but you're not necessarily, then absolutely zeroed in and focusing on only that for the next 5 years. Like check it out, make sure that it's in, and again, understand the difference between the normal, what medicine 2.0 would call normal, i.e., not sick, and like optimal. And I think like what a lot of these trackers and biometrics, that whether it's Apple or whatever you're using, they are really more honed into here's what's optimal versus like you're needing to go to the doctor soon. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if that answers your question, but it kind of, yeah, the vitamin thing, the sleep, gut health, these are all things that I feel like are much more in everybody's control and are really like the biggest. And then, movement is the other piece. And I think all of these trackers are really helping you, whether it's getting your steps or, yeah, and then also the quality of the sleep, I think is something we're looking to partner eventually with Aura Ring because they actually have both in terms of women's health and sleep metrics, really powerful data that you can tap into and understand like how important it's not just the amount of hours that you're getting. It's really like what's going on a deeper level and how much REM, how much type 4 sleep are you getting so that you're actually optimizing your systems. I mean, you sure you know that, well, we both know how much it helps to get alcohol out of the equation and getting like those much more deep levels of sleep, and that's where the deep healing comes in. Or if your body's like trying to fight off some more like chronic serious disease, if you're in optimal sleep, you're in such much better position than someone who's extremely stressed, not sleeping well, not eating well, and like so it's kind of these boring core things, but having your own data to back it up and allowing you to see it change so dramatically. And something with the gut health test, the one we use, why I like it, besides the fact that it's not connected, like they're not pushing probiotics as like that's not the end game. The end game is it's at a price point that makes it accessible for you to do it every 3 to 6 months and really see how things shift. And with your gut health, like even eating differently for 72 hours can dramatically improve so many aspects where they're talking about the vitamin deficiency and the ability, yeah, just your overall immunity is really directly affected by how healthy the immunity of your gut health is.
Yeah. I love how much deeper you can go into any one of these single areas too, because like when I stopped drinking, visibly my sleep was so much better. Like I actually slept through the whole night, right? And I have ever since. But then as I get more, into it and just trying to like the deepen the level of your understanding and how can you improve it, like I'll totally notice if I am on my phone at night, I won't get as much deep sleep. And if I eat too much sugar at night, I won't get as much deep sleep. And I need to go to bed earlier if I want that. So it's so interesting how you can, a lot of these things people like write off really quick, like, oh, well, I'm sleeping, I'm moving, I'm eating well, but it's like, but what is the layer underneath that? How can we optimize it even more? And so that's where I think a lot of people get lost because they think they're doing the things like all the time. My husband will be like, oh, I eat really healthy. And I'm like, yeah, but like, maybe it could go like this and optimize this and stuff like that. So it's like sometimes we need to like take that common sense advice, but like really unpack it a little bit more for us. Okay, so I want to be sure that we talk a little bit. You invited me to the most incredible retreat experience with my husband. Thank God, too, because a lot of times these things are not siloed, even like in a partnership, it's so important to both be healthy. And obviously, with us, we are trying to have a baby. So it just makes so much sense. So I'm so excited. We're going to Chiapas over Thanksgiving with Megan and her team. And tell me a little bit, and any of the listeners who want to pop in on this retreat, get themselves there too. And I know you have future ones as well. So if they can't make the timing, we'll put the link for the future ones as well. Tell me a little bit about what we can expect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm so passionate about this. I'm so excited. I think we've curated like the absolute perfect 5 day experience. So you arrive in Tuxtla Gutierrez, it's the capital of Chiapas, and you'll be staying at the Marriott the first night. There's just like a little opening welcoming event, and we're taking you to an incredible restaurant that's on this beautiful tropical river. And it's the same award-winning chef that's located at the Beau, which is the boutique hotel we'll be staying at for the rest of the weekend. But we're staying in Tuxtla for one night so that the first morning you'll have all of the medical testing done in the hospital in a 5 hour period. And then from there on, it's, absolute retreat mode, no more medical. We take you up the mountain to San Cristobal de las Casas, which is a UNESCO Heritage Site, living cultural city. It's spectacular cobblestones. It's, charming. It's so colorful, and it's kind of like the hinterland of both cacao and coffee production. There's a lot of tropical rainforests, and at one point, we're going to be taking you to one of my favorite waterfalls. We get to hike up. There's an option to swim if you feel so bold. And we're having a little picnic. But the first night, we do a welcoming dinner. And again, the hotel that we've chosen, we're just so excited that they're happy to partner with us as well, because it's been honestly this sanctuary space for me for a decade since it opened. Like, it's somewhere that I would just go and journal in the garden, or have a lovely meal. And they have recently won a Michelin star in the restaurant, and it's just this absolute perfect blend of the respecting the local culture and bringing and weaving that into the hotel ethos and philosophy, but also like this beautiful modern touch to it. And so that'll be sort of the sanctuary, if you will, that we'll be spending the majority of our time. We'll take a walking tour of San Cris. San Cris is the short form for San Cristobal de las Casas. And we'll be going to good friends of mine have their cacao coffee company, and we'll be doing a chocolate tasting and really a little workshop on understanding like how cacao is actually produced. And this Saturday is when we take you on the excursion, which is, a hike up this waterfall. It's actually like three or four waterfalls. It kind of just like escalates, and it's just this aqua precious water. It's spectacular. And interestingly, when I was sharing with another client that's coming, just a video, and she couldn't get over like the sound. She's like, I'm at this, she lives in San Diego, and she's like, I'm at this, man-made lake that I love walking around every day, but it just doesn't compare to like the intensity of the sound of that waterfall. And I thought that was an interesting, like, of course, it's immersive in that sense, but I love that she pulled out the sound piece of it. And so and then that evening, we're ending things off at another award-winning chef, a female chef restaurant called Tierra y Cielo. And then we're having a sound bath, which is an exceptional, I don't know if you've ever had one, but you basically just get to lie back and receive the frequencies and the vibrations of different sounds. The Sunday, yoga, meditation, all the sort of like more mindful practices in the morning, accompanied by a juice bar. And then we're going to be doing a Temazcal, which is a Mayan sweat lodge. So it's a very special ceremony. It's run by a shaman, and it's essentially they collect a lot of herbs and flowers, and then so there's like a deep aromatherapy aspect to the sweat lodge. And so that's that day. We're also doing a coffee tasting, which I don't know if you've done that before. I hadn't before. I lived in a region that produced coffee, but it's like more than just tasting different types of coffee and understanding like the different complexities and layers of flavors that go into coffee production. There's another spectacular dinner that night, and then the morning before you leave, we have a sit down with you with our team, give you like a very high level report. We will have all your results. We'll probably have all your results like the same day that you do them in the hospital, but we'll be delivering them before you leave. And then over the coming weeks, we'll deliver like professionally translated all the results in case you need to utilize them going back into your system. But we also include 12 months of support post-retreat. So we'll have quarterly check-ins where you can, come with all of your questions, whether you've gone on, and we're more than happy to support you in finding like the best solutions in your community to continue with whatever modality we think you should maybe go down, whether, hopefully everything's super great and there's nothing you need to really focus on continuing getting support with. But the reality is most of us are dealing with something or multiple things, and we want you to feel like you have the tools. Of course, like everything you can come back and have resolved or work with us. We have that layer, and we're really building that out more over 2026 in terms of like a full service suite of medical concierge for surgical procedures, all of that. It's coming. And it's something we've been doing already with a lot of inbound interest. But yeah, so I think that's where I'll leave that.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I cannot wait. What an incredible way to spend Thanksgiving. My family does like a really big Christmas, so it's perfect timing for me to be like, I don't need to be here for Thanksgiving. Let's go to Mexico. Perfect time off and everything like that. And I know we have a special gift for the listeners that if they're interested, they can get $500 off. I think the code is just euphoric AF, and you can come on this. This one's a couples one. You're doing some women's one in the future as well, right? And then more couples ones as well. So there's lots of options. But yeah, I hope to see some of you in November. That'd be super fun, and being able to do that experience together. Anything else that you wanted to part with, wise words, or anywhere else we can find you? I'm sure we'll have the show links and everything, have the links to the Alta Vita and all that kind of stuff. But I just found this episode so insightful, especially since you are so passionate from the like more holistic lens, and then you're married to someone who's been in the medical system for so long, and you guys are both passionate about helping people, and you can kind of speak to each other through it, and then you have all this team about it too. It's just like a really good blend, so that you're not like too woo-woo, right? Like there's these, some certain practices or cultures of like, oh, you have cancer, just drink this green juice. And it's like, I don't know, like maybe you gotta do a few more other things. So it's like I love that strength that you guys have with that. And it's really like you said, that medicine 3.0.
Yeah, I mean, our passion and ethos around this whole thing is really just supporting people with understanding what's in their hands, where can they be proactive and inspired to be more preventative like you said beautifully. I think we balance each other out. Like I'm definitely, I lean towards the woo, but I'm also, extremely aware that you need both sides. You need that equilibrium, and the medical lens is extremely powerful and important. And it'd be silly to like discredit it and not utilize it. And at the same time, one of its weaknesses is not really empowering patients generally to like here are all the things that are in your hands that you could do dramatically differently today, and it's going to not only change your current experience of all of these things that are going on for you health-wise, but it's really going to improve your trajectory in the long run. And so we're very passionate about longevity and helping people, particularly in our midlife age range, if you will, to understand like there's so much life to go, and you want to be as, clear-minded and energized and just content in your mind and body for as long as possible. And because, you and I as like serial entrepreneurs, like who knows what you're going to want to do in 10 years or another 10, like I know that I'm going to have multiple iterations of all the things that I'm passionate about still. And as a mother, I'm very passionate about being around as long and as not just in, we talk about our health span, but or sorry, we talk about lifespan, but we're more passionate about health span. Like I don't want to be, dependent on a home or my children, other than for the beauty that is community and emotional support. I want to be as healthy as possible, as long as possible. And this is what we're calling in for people to come and experience and understand that you have options. And a big part of optimizing those options is finding a community of specialists that can give you like these different interpretations and options at the end of the day, because there's always more than one way to solve a problem. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. You know, as you're speaking, I just thought of this funny thing. Like anytime I hear about someone who passed away in their 80s, I'm like, that's too young. You know, like my parents are like in their 80s. I'm like, no, that's like I don't think of that even as old, you know? It's so interesting. And that's
Well,
like
we
the average
just
lifespan.
celebrated a 91st birthday with a family friend, and she like 2 years ago went to Asia by herself for 6 months, like just traveling because she hadn't been to Thailand yet, and she's just like this ball of energy. I adore her. But I went to Walmart to buy a birthday card, and there was a selection of 90-year-old birthday cards now, and there was a couple of options for 100, and I thought things are shifting.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and being able to really, address like some of the frustrations that a lot of people are going through. I know myself and my family is going through them too. And just to know that there's so many other options. And it's basically not just like, okay, outsource it to this or this or this. It's, I think the core message is like get empowered, advocate for yourself, get your own data, be able to track that, be able to do these lifestyle modifications, and just know that like no one is coming around to save you, basically. Because I think that's like what you said at the beginning. We have this like savior white coat kind of syndrome where we outsource everything to that. And I think that's what's really changing and why we're living so much longer is people are really, advocating for themselves, stepping up, taking their health into their own matters. And if you don't like something in your current situation, there's other solutions out there. You know what I mean? And that's just a real breath of fresh air. So, Megan, thank you so much. We're going to link to all the things, and you guys do go grab that $500 off. That's an incredible gift that we're able to offer here. So, be sure to go get that. And I'd love to see you in November as well in Chiapas.
Thanks, Carolina.